Sexuality.
Hello and welcome to Season 6, Episode 21 of Secular Sexuality on May 23rd, 2019. Megan and Christy are out today, so I am your host, Serafina Smith. With me is my co-host, the awesome Jenna Belk.
Hello.
Our guest today is Lily Bacon.
Hi.
Lily is a recurring guest on the show, a person with a lot of knowledge of kink and polyamory, and a great kisser. So,
Aw, thanks. Same back at you.
Oh, thank you. Our topic today is fantasy play, which I expect to be a fun ride. And we'd love to have you call in with your own questions or perspective on the topic, or just anything you want to talk about. Our number, as always, is 512-686-0279, and our lines are open. Hi, everybody. How's it going today?
Good.
Awesome.
Happy to be back.
It's been a good week.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Awesome. So we don't really have much community corkboard stuff to go over today, so we're just going to jump right to the topic, which is fantasy play. So I just wanted to start us off by, going around the table and talking about, fantasies that we've perhaps played out in real life with a lover or, casual fling or whatever. So, Lily, I'm going to put you on the spot first since you're our guest. That's
sure.
the privilege of being a guest here.
Absolutely. So when you texted me earlier today and said that was the topic, I had a bunch of questions run into my head, but I chose to just let them be so that we could deal with them now. But my initial question was, I was trying to figure out if you meant specifically like role play fantasy, that kind of thing, or more like self fantasy, like masturbation time, the real playing in your head, or what? I was trying to figure out what the subject really was there.
Right. Good point. And then, it is a broad subject, isn't it? I mean, because so much of what we're doing, when we are in bed with someone is living out one fantasy or another anyway, or even when we're by ourselves, just what do we fantasize about to get ourselves off? So, I'm just going to leave it broad and open.
Okay.
So that way we, have plenty of content.
Yeah. So fantasy stuff. I think I've been on kind of a journey with some of that. I know that, okay, so background, I was 26 years in a very vanilla, very monogamous marriage, which I did gracefully, no problem. But when it was over, it was really over.
Okay.
Yeah, and I bust out and checked a bunch of boxes that needed checking, so to speak. So I have very much noticed an evolution of my own fantasy life, especially in terms of like what reels are playing in my head in masturbation time. It very much was for the longest time throughout the majority of that marriage that I never featured in those fantasies.
Really?
It was almost like I was directing a movie that I was casting actors and actresses in, and it was more like direction. It was not what, as I came to understand, as I became more open and started talking to people about their fantasy life, I came to realize, I was doing it wrong.
I don't know.
Or I was doing it very differently than most people were. But I think that was because, while I've always been an enormously sexual person, I think I was not comfortable with projecting myself into those fantasies for a very long time. And it was very interesting to me as my external life shifted to watch how my internal life began to shift. And the point at which I started showing up in my fantasies was, that was an interesting turning point that I went and talked about in therapy, of course. Because, that was something of note. And then I'm noticing a shift again in that part of my head where, because of some of the things I have chosen to do in my actual real life, that reel in my head is flipping over to memories more than unrealized, impossible things. So that's a nice thing I'm starting to enjoy.
Do you feel like that those changes like marked some sort of transitional periods in your life?
Absolutely. Yeah. Just coming out of that marriage, discovering who I was as a solo individual person, discovering polyamory and the multitude of freedoms that affords one, both emotionally and romantically, but absolutely sexually. And simultaneously discovering that I'm hella kinky, and what that means, and exploring a bunch of different branches of that. Yeah, there was so much transformation going on, and it would almost be more surprising if my fantasy life had stayed rock steady and had not shifted around with all that growth and change.
That's so awesome. I mean, just like hearing that. It's making me like think about like what has changed in my life. We're trying to follow along with like what I've wanted and like what my masturbatory ideas and images are, and like how does that change. So now I'm going to be thinking about that all night. So thank you.
You're welcome. Enjoy.
Jenna, did you have a perspective to share?
Well, so I guess on this show, I'm basically the baby atheist. I'm married. I have had sex.
Okay.
I've had sex with people before I was
glad
married.
Yeah.
But I would say that, I mean, the standard like sex life that you would think of in a normal relationship, and I don't want to use that word normal. I hate using that word.
Typical? Standard?
Typical, vanilla, I guess.
Dull.
Not dull. Definitely not dull.
Excellent. I'm really glad to hear that.
But I basically, with this show and with discovering other people in this community and just making new friends, I have found the pathway to the door. So I haven't opened the door yet. I'm not necessarily there yet, but I'm on the way, and so I'm here to learn. So.
Are you still about to ring the bell, or are you just standing in the open threshold, or?
I don't know right now.
I'm liking this imagery.
Yeah.
Yeah. I speak in metaphors and similes a lot.
Me too.
Great. Do you? I mean, I'm going to get personal now. Like, do you have fantasies that you imagine?
Yeah, actually. So to get personal.
Oh yeah.
I think we're gonna.
This is what we do here.
I've discovered that I like it rougher.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was a kid, I would have dreams about being taken advantage of. And I liked it, but it wasn't. And I found an article on Psychology Today about how they wish that people would stop calling it rape fantasies, because it's not rape.
Yeah.
Right.
It's not actually being possessed, like taking control over. It's more of just being wanted, wanting to be ravished, wanting to be so wanted that you just get physical and, violent. And it's interesting. So I don't know really what to call it. But yes.
Ravishment is what the evolving term is, ravishment fantasy.
So then that.
And there's a book, a really wonderful book that's an easy little read that's called What Women Want, something like Behind the Science of Female Desire or something like that.
You know the author?
I can't remember, but I first learned about it on Dan Savage's podcast. And it's basically a synopsis of the current research into female sexuality.
Oh, cool.
And so it addresses the question, why are rape or ravishment fantasies so common? And they are really common.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
And it's exactly what you said. It's that what women actually want at base, very broadly, of course, speaking, not individually speaking, is to be recognized for the goddess that we are.
Yeah.
And to have lovers who are powerless in the face of our beauty and, all of that, so powerfully overcome that they lose track of their veneer of civilization. That's what's at the heart of that fantasy, according to that book. And the book was a really interesting read.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, so that's there.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, looking at it from the other side, from the ravisher side of things, to me, that's always been about this notion of, and it's run a lot through a lot of my fantasy in general, is just this notion of this person wants to be with me so much that they will overcome discomfort to do it. So, it's a theme that runs throughout a lot of the things that I fantasize about: bondage fantasy or ravishment fantasy, that sort of thing. It's just like, they're so, taken by their passion that, this doesn't even matter. That they're just going to go with it.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, that's what gets me going.
Right.
But let's talk specifics.
Okay.
You were talking about you cast like a director in your previous thing.
That was just sort of how my head worked, but I think it was a discomfort with my own ability to have the kind of sex life that actually would work for me, because under the restrictions of that particular marriage, I was cut off from a lot. So I think I just sort of was basically making porn in my head. And when you watch porn, you're looking at other people, not yourself. I mean, there are POV porn that can kind of let you sort of halfway kind of get in the scene, but I think that's kind of more or less what I was doing. And a lot of it being, I think a big theme for it back at that part of my life was being, having characters in situations where behavior was different from what our societal norms are. More orgiastic sort of environments where sexual freedom was accepted and expected and everybody was okay with it, and sort of imagining spaces like that. The thing is, since then, I've found myself in lots of spaces like that and created lots of spaces like that. I currently run a Facebook group for, actually I run several, but one of them for the kinky and poly folks of Austin, the ones who are both kinky and poly. I run another group that exists only in support of the parties that we actually throw once a month. And those are a combination of swinging and kink and poly, and it's basically they're sex parties. So, and I attend a bunch of different kink parties. So, I mean, I'm living so much of this that I don't have those particular fantasies anymore.
Right.
That's not what plays through my head anymore, because that was,
Did that Tuesday.
Well,
whatever.
and in fact, I've got one I can go to after this tonight.
Excellent.
And then there's another one on Saturday night, and I know of the huge one on Sunday night. I could easily do 3 this week. I'm not gonna, but I could.
But you could.
Yeah, or I might. I don't know. We'll see.
What
Night is young.
what is a sex party?
It's a party, and there's sex.
I mean, so is it like everybody in one room, or I mean,
They're all a little different.
just different kinds?
Okay, so in Swingerland, and the difference between swinger and poly,
Yes.
got a good
Yes.
grip on that?
Yes.
Okay. And a lot of people don't, so I'll sum up quickly. Swingers, typically, the majority of swinger culture is committed couples who are choosing to have additional partners for sex purposes beyond their committed partnership. Typically in swinger culture, the big taboo is not having sex with somebody else, but having an emotional connection with someone else. Don't you dare develop feelings, because that's the betrayal.
It's the scary thing.
It's the scary thing. Now, polyamory is different in that it's about the relationship, and most of the time there's also a sexual connection. But I personally know quite a few asexual people who are polyamorous and have multiple deeply committed romantic relationships. So that's the big difference. Now, in a typical swinger party, what you usually see is people who come in together as a couple, splitting off and coming in and joining up with other people who came in as a couple. So they tend to go off and have sex in pairs, often in the same room, but not necessarily. But you don't, in my experience, and it is limited in swing culture because I don't consider myself a swinger. I've been to a few of their parties. Usually you see less of the, multitudes of people and triads and quads and all of that. But sex parties are very often kink flavored as well. So there's all different types of kink going on and some sexual activity as well.
Okay.
So
Cool.
Does that kind of get it?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. For more information, see previous episodes
Yes.
of the show.
No
So
doubt.
you were, yeah, so that's pretty cool. Like,
Yeah.
is it like, so I've heard of like key parties. Is that a thing?
Oh, that's like
is that like-
1970s old
Okay.
school. That's what our parents were allegedly getting up to in the
Gotcha.
suburbs. Yeah.
Assuming they were telling the truth.
Yeah. That would be everybody throws their keys in the bowl when they come into the party, and then you pick out a set of keys and you go home and bang whoever's keys you got. But I don't know how true that is,
It
or if
doesn't
it's
sound very
apocryphal. It
practical.
doesn't sound very practical. It doesn't, no. But yeah, anyway. But you were asking about fantasies lived out.
Right.
And one question you asked just as we went into the show was whether or not I've been asked to fulfill fantasies.
Right.
And yeah, a bunch of times.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them I have
Sandy.
said, hell yeah, let's do that. Some of them I've treated like improv. Yes, and, coming up with additional fun flourishes for that. I have also had a few where I've had fantasies proposed to me that I was like, no. I was very newly coming into all of this, brand baby new, and met up with somebody on one of the dating sites, and we started up a chat. And I think he and I went out for drinks one night. He was a nice enough guy. So we continued talking, and he had correctly clocked me as hypersexual and decided that meant I was up for anything, which is not true. But he very quickly proposed a fantasy in which he had somebody else he was talking with who was a lady of color, and she was wanting to do a master and master's wife and slave scene. And I was not having it.
Yeah.
I'm not playing that, no. Yeah, so that was the first thing where somebody came at me with something that was just beyond my boundaries. But I had one this week.
Oh.
Yeah.
Fresh on the mind. All right.
Very fresh on the mind. So, again, OkCupid. I don't even know why. This guy started talking to me. He seemed fairly cool. I broke my usual rule, which is not to take it off the OkCupid platform for a very long time, because the second you do, you get a dick pic. That's how that works.
yeah.
Right. Somehow he convinced me this was a good idea. We had mutual friends, and so I was like, okay, he's probably okay, whatever. 10 messages in over on Facebook Messenger, dick pic, not only his, but his male lovers as well. And my response to that is, did you get consent from your friend?
Right.
And by the way, did you ask my consent? Because no, you did not.
No.
So right off, we've got a judgment error on this guy's part. That's not the big issue. The big issue is that he apologizes tepidly for that and then starts talking about his sister that he's very close to.
Okay.
And then he sends me a picture that was, I Google reverse image searched that because I didn't believe that was a real person anywhere around here. And he's telling me all about his sister. He's so much about the sister. And I finally said, why do I get the feeling you're about to propose a three-way with your sister? And he goes, haha, nah. And 10 messages later, it comes out. He doesn't want a three-way. He just wants to watch me and her.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. That was a limit for me.
A little awkward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, that was a boundary and a limit. Yeah.
Okay.
Draw the line at incest.
Yeah.
I'm there with you.
You do
Yeah.
you, whatever, but I'm not playing that particular game. No thanks. So, yeah. So, yes, I have been asked to fulfill fantasies that I was not going to go for.
Okay. All right. We're going to take a call now. But the lines are still open. Please give us a call if you want to talk about anything. If you've got your fantasies that you want to talk about, please let us know. So we are going to go to Amber in Austin. Amber, you're on the line.
Hi.
Hi, Amber.
Hey.
Hi.
Hello. So I've just got a couple of different things. Number one, thank you for taking my call and doing this show and being wonderful.
Thank you for calling.
No, thank you.
So I've got a couple of, blah, blah, blah.
Don't be nervous.
Like,
It's okay. Nobody sees you. They just see us.
nobody sees me. This is true. Thus I am scantily clad.
Ooh.
And in everybody else's fantasy.
Oh, right.
No, but so here's the deal. I am poly. I am kinky as well. So hi, Lily.
Hi.
And I am married to an asexual, aromantic wife, and she is amazeballs, and I love her so much. And it's weird for her because she loves me too, and she's aromantic, and so it's super weird. But it works really well, thank God. Or not God, I don't know. But one of the things that gets her going, in fact, like one of the only things that gets her going, because she's ace, is tentacles. And so I would love to hear some thoughts about how I could potentially incorporate some of that into the bedroom, I guess, like how to implement a tentacle fantasy when I only have 2 arms.
There's a whole bunch of toys based on that, like a lot.
Mm-hmm.
There's dildos, and I've seen a bunch of different stuff that is designed to look like tentacles. So I would get to shopping.
Yeah. And then, I mean, if you want to, turn the lights off, and then you can just sort of like, I don't know, make squishy noises.
Put on like Planet Earth in the background and have some whale noises in the background.
I actually really like the idea of turn out the lights and make it an auditory experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Put a blindfold on her.
Ooh, yeah.
And start in telling a story that's all about ravishment by a tentacled creature.
Yeah.
Like really whisper up in her ear while things are happening with maybe one of these tentacle toys I'm talking about.
Right. Put some lubricant on it for slime effect.
Yeah, there you
that's
go.
a thing. I don't know, speak Japanese.
And of course, there's loads and loads of tentacle porn out there that could help set the mood and, help inspire some storytelling for you as well.
I have seen live action tentacle porn, and it was interesting.
Really?
Yeah. They had these fake tentacles that was basically, it was sort of like a tube that was, painted to look like a tentacle, and it was basically a dildo at the end. And, inside it was just sort of like a sort of a vaguely bendable rod. So the people were off camera, and they were like, really, and they were like, oh no. That's my exact representation of it. And so, if you could even go that far, is to like, put it some sort of holder on it, and then so make it longer so that it actually can like drag it over her or something like that to feel like it.
Or I would say just ask her what about it, what features of it are appealing to her, because it may be something about the sensation, it may be the way it looks. Figure out which of the senses it's triggering for her so you can know which direction to move towards.
Mm-hmm. And if she's like sex repulsed, and maybe it's like she only gets off to this because it feels like something alien and different than sex, maybe that's something to focus on when you're fantasizing, when you're playing out the fantasy, like how strange and alien and different this is.
Ooh, I wonder if the ovipositors thing would be.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
She does.
So you've done your research.
You're winning.
I've seen that done at parties, and people who are into it seem to be way into it. Basically, the fantasy is having a creature lay eggs inside you.
Okay.
So there's this tube thingy that gets used.
Sort of a dildo.
Kind of dildo-like, but it's hollow and you can put things in it and make it come out the other end. And so they make these eggs out of squishy gelatin, which are actual gelatin because it's not harmful to the human body.
Right.
And they plop eggs
Interesting.
out of it and into you. And then there's the whole laying the eggs again afterwards thing.
Ah.
That falls under, not my kink, but joy. For those for whom it's a great thing, they seem really, really into it. Yeah.
So try asking her different the different things that she likes about it. Maybe if she's into tentacle porn, like watch with her some of the stuff that she has liked, so that you can get a real feel of what it is about it that turns her on, so that you can better replicate it.
Okay. That all sounds good.
And report back because we want to know.
Yeah, definitely. Give us another call.
Okay. Before I hang up, I do have a secondary question that does not involve my wife. It involves
Sure
me because she's ace and aromantic. Oh, hush. Because she's ace and aromantic, and I am not. So it is an open marriage, and I date around. And one of my fantasies is kind of vanilla in a lot of ways. I love the cream pie fantasy. I love the idea of sex without condoms, with penis wielding people, typically. And
I like that phrase.
Me too.
Penis wielding. It sounds so much cooler.
Yeah.
and so I like this idea a lot, and I have found myself thinking it while I'm having these interactions with, for lack of a better term, basically strangers. And I recognize that that's not a safe way. I recognize safer sex practices would preclude me from doing that so much.
Sure.
So I'm just like drawing the line between fantasy play and reality, and making sure that one's satisfied with reality, but also I don't know. It's messy, literally, in the case of this particular fantasy. But yeah, it's just how
to play that out without
getting hurt.
Okay, I kind of have some insight there.
Risk-aware, consensual kind of thing.
So I had a partner for a while. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, yes, I'm sorry. I was saying, please, you had a partner for a while.
I had a partner for a while whose big turn on was impregnation. He was so into the idea of knocking people up. It wasn't possible with me. My tubes are tight, and I'm older than I look, and that wasn't going to happen. And he knew perfectly well that was a super bad life plan, but nonetheless, it was what turned him on. And so the way we got around that was, condoms were happening until that relationship got to a point where we were fluid bonded. And I still wasn't going to get knocked up even once we were fluid bonded. But even though we had a very clear conversation saying condoms will stay on, we're not taking the condom off, but we're going to pretend we did and play pretend here. And so there was a lot of sexy talk about him coming inside me and getting me knocked up, and just loads and loads of, so to speak, of sexy talk about it. And that may be where you have to go to get that cream pie fantasy going, just talking about the cum instead of it actually, you'd have to make an agreement with a partner. I'm going to talk about taking the condom off, but we're not actually going to do it. So you get that agreement going. And then, maybe at some point you actually wind up with somebody that you could get into a fluid bonded situation with that is tested, regularly and that you actually trust and, like that. And then it becomes easier to fulfill that fantasy. Does that help?
Yeah.
Ish, kind of.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that when, for instance, when they do cream pie fantasies in porn, and you're looking at the results, it's pretty much never actually happened. They just have a substance. I once knew what it was. I don't know, dish soap. I don't know what it was, but they just have a substance that they put into whatever orifice it was.
To let it leak out.
To let it leak out and show. So there's probably, various ways that you can use, fantasy and play and props during a sex act to sort of simulate it, to make yourself feel more like this fantasy is being fulfilled until you're able to actually, do it with someone who's regularly tested and is trusted.
Lots of lube. Lots and lots of lube.
Definitely lots of
Okay. Yeah. I don't know.
I really don't have anything. I wish I could help.
That's okay. I'm just throwing tentacles at you and cream pies at you. And, just all sorts of stuff.
Fun talk.
Fun talk. Oh, I appreciate everything, and you ladies just have a fantastic evening, and I hope you get lots of wonderful callers. And thanks so much for doing what you do.
Thank you so much.
Have a great day. Night.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Oh,
That was fun.
Great. Yeah.
Good questions.
Right off the bat. Tentacles.
Yeah, throwing tentacles and cream pies
Cool.
at us like you do.
Yeah.
We would love to hear more from you folks out there. Love to hear your fantasies or any, other sexuality or gender-related questions that you want to throw at us. Let us know. Lines are open. So I just wanted to talk about the role of fantasy in our lives. Specifically sexually. I mean, fantasy is very generalized, but
$1 million.
yes, my fantasy is
Yes.
being completely financially independent.
That's hot.
That is hot. No, just we have so much sexual shame thrown at us in our childhood and just from, our families and friends and our culture and all the media that we consume. That a lot of times fantasy seems like it's the only way that we can, even touch our sexuality. And so I just wanted to ask, is there any aspect of your fantasies that you feel is expressing what you can't express in real life? Like some sort of aspect of yourself that you don't feel, safe to touch, that you can only touch in fantasy? Either of you. Jenna, let's go to you first.
Well, when I think, when I was a little kid, I was picked on a lot. Mm-hmm. And so when I think about, just the things that I was told about how unattractive I was, and then I think about as I'm getting older and I start going through puberty and start developing and all that, and then I start that fantasy, I think that that's something that, it's psychological, it satisfies that fantasy, gives me that reassurance that I am physically attractive as well as internally, But, I'm at the point where I don't really need that to be acted out because I get everything that I need from the partner that I'm with.
Nice.
So I don't even go there anymore. So,
Cool.
Yeah. That's helpful.
Of course. Lily?
Well, certainly a lot of what I was doing, in the marriage, those kind of fantasies, those were about not feeling free sexually.
Yeah, you talked about how all your fantasies were about, these unrestrained things that you couldn't do.
Right. Sexual freedom, ultimate sexual freedom was what the theme was. I think they're shifting I'm trying to even think because, as I said, when I'm doing solo fantasizing now, it's almost always, well, for one thing, it doesn't take anywhere near as long. I'm much more efficient now.
Well, that's good.
So that's pretty helpful. So I'm not needing to concoct these long, drawn-out things anymore. So it tends to be more a quick flash on something that did happen, or a brief meditation on some aspect of one of my lovers that I'm like, oh, his shoulders, oh, her ankles, just for a second there, but that's sort of what's going on in my head there. In terms of the rest of like what actually happens in my life, because I can generally go to one partner or another and go, so I got this crazy idea. And very often I can get that fulfilled. Now, some of it is dark enough that it ain't ever going to happen. And that's okay. But it's a lovely thing to have partners that are accepting enough that I could tell them the really crazy dark shit. And
Pretty amazing.
Yeah, that's actually been pretty fantastic. Yeah. And so that actually has helped me sort of release a lot of it. But there's also, I'm a switch, meaning in kink terms, I like to play both as a dominant and as a submissive, and I'm comfortable in either role depending on which partner I'm with and what that organic connection is with them. So that has allowed a tremendous amount of latitude in being able to act things out. So there's that, for sure.
Awesome.
I'm being very vague.
That's okay. These things are personal.
Yeah, they're super personal when they've been done in front of 250 people at the big parties. And yeah.
Fair enough.
But a lot of it, a lot of where I live in fantasy space is psychological. That's a very happy space for me. Either psychological dominance or psychological submission is a lot of my stuff. We got into a very silly one last night. I got into a gun control debate with my boyfriend. I grew up in a very pacifist household. Guns are evil, and that's where I've remained. He's actually a munitions specialist and loves guns as works of engineering art, and really, really knows and understands them. And we got ourselves into a debate last night on the couch, and it was a rousing debate.
Oh, my.
Which, he's going to love this. He won. He totally won. Anyway, so a couple hours later, we're in bed. We're having sex. He starts edging me, meaning he is bringing me to the brink of orgasm and then stopping. Over and over and over and over. And he's grinning and giggling. So I know he's up to something. I know he's got an evil plan.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And finally it's, how bad do you want to come? I'm like, yeah. So I admit that, yes, come on. And he says, okay, all you have to do, baby, is say, guns save lives.
Oh.
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure I know where he's going with the next phase of this.
I hope you're watching.
No, he's on a date with his other girlfriend, which is fine. He'll catch up to it eventually. I strongly suspect we're going to wind up in a public space where I am made to yell pro-Trump propaganda.
Oh my.
Wow.
Yeah. There may or may not be a MAGA hat involved.
Oh, dear.
Well.
Okay.
Shenanigans.
Make
Silly,
your orgasms green
silly.
again. Okay.
That's fantastic. Yes. So psychological dominance, but that was very playful. You know, I've certainly participated in and seen much heavier types of dominance and submission from both sides of the slash. Yeah.
I don't think I could handle that personally.
No, it was hilarious.
You made me say, what? You've
Yeah.
We're taking this out of the bedroom. Oh gosh. Yeah, I was just thinking. I was trying to think. I was trying to answer my own question, and think about, what my fantasies have said about me and just the way they've evolved. And it's kind of funny because I can remember way back when I was very young, the fantasies that I would have, and it was like pre-sex, pre-understanding sex before, and it was just like I knew that being touched down there felt good. I didn't know why or what it was about, but so I would think about a girl I like touching me there. I was like, oh, that's great. That was like my first fantasizing, and it I didn't even know that it was sexual. I was just was like,
How pure.
I know, so innocent. That's me. And then it just, it developed into all sorts of different things. Rich fantasy life. And it became shaped pretty quickly by pornography, because, I would see what other people's fantasies were through penthouse letters, because I'm that age. Back when people had magazines, kids, and had to buy their porn.
Or find them under their dad's mattress.
Yes. Or steal them from their parents' rooms. Funny story. My dad had a collection of penthouse magazines that he kept in a very obvious place for many years. And, as I was growing up in my budding sexuality and desperately would have loved to see all this pornography, and it was there in this obvious place. And I didn't know because all I saw was the word penthouse. And I thought it was a freaking archaeology magazine.
Or architecture.
Yeah, architecture. That's the word. I know words. But yeah, so pornography started shaping my fantasy when I was in my teens and early adults, because it was, I was getting all these secondhand fantasies, which is kind of what porn is, right?
Ooh, that's such a good way of putting that.
Yeah. And so it's been interesting seeing where that went, and as the dawn of the internet, pornography, how much that changed it, because I was getting so much access to broader range of different fantasies that I hadn't before. So, would you say that that you've seen anything like that happen with you, where the fantasies or situations that you've encountered influenced you?
I've absolutely been with people that I was like, yeah, they only like that because they've seen it in porn.
Right?
Yeah. That when they make that face and that move, and it's like, yeah, you've seen that in 100 pornos, and it doesn't actually feel good in real life.
Right.
It looks like you think it's gonna be hot, but it's not really hot.
Yeah, so many positions that I'm like, that
it's completely impractical.
No one does that in real life.
Exactly.
It's just there so the camera can see it.
Yeah, so I mean, actually sort of the opposite. I don't know that porn has unduly influenced me, but I've definitely seen it influence others that I've interacted with. So.
I used to cocktail at a strip club, and I probably learned most of what I know there.
Oh, cool.
Just the way that the women dance, the way that they move and things. I learned a lot. Just I don't know how to explain it without getting up and starting twerking.
I'm, not saying no, but
yeah.
I mean, just the way that they express their sexuality.
Yeah, the way that they, yeah.
I get it. Who decided that this is hot? The finger in the mouth thing. That comes out of, print porn.
Seduction.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's interesting how our culture shapes our fantasy, and how and from the other side, how much of our fantasy is a countering, a response against that culture, because it's well, I'm not supposed to like this, but I'm going to fantasize about it all day.
Right.
We have another call. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the lines here. We have Megan from Moscow. ID is Indiana? Idaho? Idaho.
I think.
Moscow, Idaho.
Yeah.
Perhaps. We're going to find out. Hello, Megan. You're on the show.
Hi.
Hi, Megan.
It's nice to see you gals. Yeah, I've seen a link to the secular sexuality before, and so I decided to check it out. And it's pretty cool. You guys are talking about fantasies and stuff, and I noticed a trans woman amongst you. And I just had my surgery yesterday.
Awesome.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I'm actually in the hospital bed right now. But yeah, I love these shows on the Atheist Experience, and I noticed you're on the topic of fantasy, and I've been out of the scene for a while, but I guess I kind of wanted to talk about like anthropomorphic and like furry type fetish fantasies.
Ooh, yeah.
I identify as an anthropomorphic rat, but it's something, you know, if I had the budget, I would pursue, you know, but you know, it's a big difference, you know, to consider fetishistic body modifications versus, you know, the transgender stuff that I went through, you know, so yeah, I had,
you know, baby steps.
yeah, and, yeah, then there's, you know, money and stuff, and it'll probably take a career and baby steps. But yeah, it's a good show, and I want to keep watching. So I don't know, like if anybody else really is into the furry scene or anything like that.
Not personally, but I certainly know of some folks in Austin who are, and I've just in the last couple of months I've been to 2 parties in which, for the first time ever, I saw furries in the wild, you know,
in the wild,
in real life, you know. There's certainly a big community, and this was my personal first encounter with them, but there's a bunch of them around here apparently. The first person that I saw that I was like, oh goodness, an actual furry, was a dude running around the party wearing wolf paws on hands and feet and a big plushy wolf head and a collar and nothing else. And running around super happy and begging for belly scritches. And he was clearly having the best time. Yeah.
Yeah, I've never been into furry stuff myself, despite having a mild crush on Maid Marian from the Robin Hood Disney one.
Yeah.
I mean, because
she's foxy.
Both of the foxes in that film. Yes.
Yeah.
But you know, I
used to.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, like I used to like have a set of acrylic, like there's a guy over in Washington State that does fangs for people with acrylic, and I used to have a set of dental acrylic rat teeth that he made me. But they got lost some time ago, and I might make contact to have that done again.
Yeah.
So yeah,
that sounds really cool.
Figuring out a tail, you know. But that's my kink, pretty much my big kink.
Thank you for sharing that.
You know,
on Halloween a few years ago, it was when that Ylvis song, What Did the Fox Say, was really popular. So I got these like fake fox gloves with like little ceramic claws, and you know, fox ears on a little headband. I got like a sort of a corset sort of thing that had the fur on it and a dangly tail. And I was just running around work with like a "What Does the Fox Say" song on sign. Yes, my primary partner at the time definitely appreciated that, and so that got used outside of Halloween is what I'm saying.
Oh,
Okay.
Yeah, I used to go to Vampire the Masquerade, and at one point they introduced changelings, and one of the types was a puka, which is pretty much, you know, like half human, half whatever animal, and so that was a lot of fun. I've done like rat puka and squirrel puka and various things. And then, I went to a furry convention back in 2013 in Seattle, and it was pretty wild. There's over 2,000 people.
Wow.
Wow.
All walks of life. I mean, all kinds of furries, and yeah, it was really cool. Pretty big community.
And my own experience with conventions is like sci-fi cons and stuff. So I have no idea like what goes on there at a furry con, like other than yiffing. Like what's the con about?
Well, it was like you were talking about the one in like belly scratches, or like sometimes like two will, in fursuits will like they'll like kind of have like a play going on, acting out.
Oh.
With each other and stuff, mingling, and yeah, it was really cute. And it was neat. It's definitely something I'd like to do again. And I know that the room parties get pretty wild. So I don't know, but yeah. So
That's awesome.
Anyhow, well, you ladies have a good show. I'm going to get back to watching it.
Okay, speedy recovery.
Yeah, thank you
take
so
care of
much for
yourself.
calling, and congratulations on your
Yes.
surgery.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, the surgeon said that it went perfect, like no complications.
Oh, good.
And,
That's amazing.
yeah. And so I should be out of here Saturday, and then I'm hoping to head home Monday because I miss my kitty cat.
Aw.
So,
Thank you so much
All
for
right.
calling,
Oh my
Megan. We really
goodness, she's
appreciate
a
it.
rat with a cat.
yeah, thank you. Have a good night.
It's wonderful.
Thank
too.
you.
Bye.
Thanks.
That's adorable.
So cute. A rat who owns a cat.
I mean, it's safer than the other way around, probably.
Right.
Fantasy play.
I know when I am reading erotica that very often that is a spark for, there's an interesting fantasy, that kind of thing. It's like, that's an excellent question. I mean, where do you derive inspiration for fresh fantasy fodder? What gives you that, I may have a new kink kind of a moment?
Yeah, and that's great because, literary erotica, you've got so many more places you can go than if you're, doing a video or photo porn, that stuff. You can have amazing science fiction adventures with creatures with all sorts of.
Oh, yeah. In fact, that does kind of bring up a subject. There are people who have impossible to realize fantasies. There are plenty of centaur fetishists out there. Good luck,
Wow, that would be difficult to do. Yeah.
Yes. I have a friend who's got a couple of completely impossible fantasies that form the majority of his sexuality. A couple of them. One of them is a pronounced vor thing.
Right.
He's all about mouths and uvulas and teeth and being eaten and devoured, and that's his whole, he's so into it. But his other thing is the idea of being small, by which he means being small, like this.
Right.
So giant women, literal giant women. I had a date with him once. We were friends, and we also went out on a date to explore a little bit more there. And he opened up and was telling me about it. And I said, okay, so you said you like big women, and I'm 5'10", but you're taller than I am. And he's like, no, big women, like Tormund in Game of Thrones with
The big woman.
Big woman here, yeah. But what he means is in her pocket. He wants to be sugar glider size and ride around in a pocket.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, okay, so how do you express that in your actual sex life? And he goes, well, I've got a couple of partners who have explored this with me as much as we possibly can, and it's a lot of talking about it and fantasizing about it verbally while doing what we can do physically.
Right.
But try to put me in the headspace of being really little and talk about eating me and devouring me. And so it's a lot of talking about it, which is kind of where I was going with the first caller and the tentacle thing.
Right.
So.
Yeah, ways to ways to pretend that you're doing
Yeah.
what you can't literally do.
Because after all, what is sexual fantasy play but the grown-up version of playing pretend?
Mm-hmm.
You know,
It's true.
It's Dan Savage always calls BDSM cops and robbers for grown-ups with your pants off.
Okay.
I like that.
Me too.
Hadn't heard that one before. That's pretty good. Yeah, I mean, and it's interesting how many fantasies are like that. How many fantasies are just completely unrealizable, or technically possible, but not doable realistically. So many that are dangerous or illegal. There's snuff. People fantasize about being killed sometimes, and that's what gets them off. And it makes me wonder, like, how people cope. If what gets you off is something that is so either impossible or just forbidden. And you gave a great example.
Yeah.
Of we just sort of do it in our heads, sort of, while we do other things.
As much as you can. Or you find the safest possible ways to live it out. I actually know of a group of guys. I think there's about 5 or 6 of them in something they're calling the Fantasy Fulfillment Service. And what they're doing is gangbang realization, because there's an awful lot of women who really do want to experience that.
Yeah.
And
I know of at least 3 groups here in Austin.
yeah, I'm sure that the one I am connected to is not the only one. But, pretty much you can say, yeah, so sign me up. And they'll say, so do you want just the straight up gangbang? Do you want the humiliation version of the gangbang? Do you want the bondage and takedown? Do you want the full on kidnapping experience? Like that. They have package deals,
Wow.
Sounds
yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. I have not partaken of that particular one yet, but I think I'm somewhere on the list. I think they'll get around to me eventually.
Maybe
That sounds kind of fun.
send me a message
there we
about that. That's all I'm saying.
I don't know.
This is kind of getting sort of into your territory, isn't it?
Maybe. I don't know.
I mean,
Everybody is tested and, safe, and condoms are rigorously, properly used. And, it's just, it's finding people you trust to help you fulfill the fantasy within safe boundaries.
Yeah. I mean, that's ideal, isn't it?
Yeah.
all I'm saying is message me after the show.
Okay.
For no reason.
None whatsoever. No.
But yeah, that sounds really neat. Just a way to they're safely helping fulfill other people's fantasies, and that's amazing.
And, as much as possible, explore through the kink scene. There's a lot of people living out their fantasies. So, and you get to see a lot of really amazing things that way that you may or may not have realized kind of worked for you. And I don't know. I mean, like, I could tell you one of the favorite scenes I ever saw.
Go on.
Totally worked for me. I was at a party and saw a woman walking around the party wearing this enormous taffeta giant ball gown thing, looked like, a very large prom dress.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, well, that's a little fancy for a kink party, but okay, you do you. There's all kinds of states of dress and undress at these things. Later on, I realized what it was it was for her scene. She had bought this huge dress at like Goodwill or something, and she was doing a scene where there was a hard point on the ceiling, and she was handcuffed up like this so that she had just her toes on the ground. So she was off balance the whole time, but was safe there. And she had her boyfriend and 2 other gentlemen who were slowly cutting this dress off her with knives. And they were very strategic, and she was blindfolded through almost the entire scene. They were cutting it so that the effect was, because it was taffeta, the sound of the ripping of the fabric. And it was a very long gown, so they could get a long rip going. And it took them about 45 minutes to get this thing off of her. It was very slow and very sensual. And they had left only the little strips at the shoulders, so it was still in flutters and tatters around her body when they took her blindfold off, and she realized that there was a crowd of about 50 people watching. And that's when they cut the bits off her shoulders and the rest of it fell. And I was just like,
And I'm spent.
oh, God, that was an amazing scene. So,
I mean,
Cool.
yeah.
Yeah. Just hearing about it.
Right? And I'm like, right. Cutting knives, clothes. Okay, let's go hit Goodwill.
Indeed.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, I've got some ideas right now. Okay. All right, we have a call from some obscure person. Tristy Powell. Christy, you're on the show.
Hey, y'all.
Hi.
Hey,
How's it
Christy.
going?
Hey, yeah, well, first I just want to say it's great seeing three ladies doing the show, and y'all have me just, like, pumping my fist with all the great information and great advice y'all are giving. So
I mean,
I'm excited to see y'all and very appreciative of y'all jumping in.
Pumping your fist, huh?
I'm glad you're pumping your fist.
Yeah.
I mean, I know we're pretty cute, but all right.
The internet, I'm just laying it out there. No, I did have a question though. I mean, y'all know me. I do the sex therapist, sex educator thing. So like, I'm very used to the fact that most of the time when I meet a partner, I have to kind of like walk them through certain things and kind of give them the 101 on, you know, a lot of stuff. And so that I'm used to. But I've always had like a very imaginative fantasy life, like even when I was a kid, before there was anything sexual about it, just very, you know, that's kind of who I am. And I have this amazing partner who just is not that way. And it's kind of become really interesting where we have this like really great sex life, but sometimes we'll be talking about fantasies or ideas or even just, you know, what we want to do tomorrow. And there's like this disconnect. And I think I'm not necessarily even asking, you know, how to change that. Like, she's great, but more just, I guess, trying to get some empathy or some understanding. I don't know what y'all's experience is, if you have had partners that are just not imaginative in that particular way. You know, if they don't necessarily have a, like, really solo sex life or have like a deep fantasy life or that kind of thing, and just how you relate to one another.
I in a past relationship have had frustrations and not had a partner that was well, I guess I never asked either. I'd never really faced any of my fantasies out loud. And when I was younger and in inexperienced relationships and trying to satisfy myself without that partner, I just explored masturbating and just kind of...
More about the physical sensations
Yeah.
than the psychological portion.
Yeah, just kind of fantasized with myself that way. Yeah, but I don't know.
Yeah, I definitely hear that. It's just, I guess I take it for granted that everybody masturbates twice a day, you know, like Dr. Daryl Ray recommends.
Not true, though.
No.
I didn't even figure out how to until I was in my late 30s.
Yeah, maybe
Yeah.
once a week
I
for
hear
me.
those kinds of stories. I know that that's true. I guess I just don't think about it in terms of like my own personal life, you know?
But even for someone as sexual as I am, and it's not uncommon. As soon as I did figure it out, I immediately told my best friend, "Oh my God." And she's like, "I have never been able to figure that out." And then I taught her. So it's not uncommon for women,
Off to the races.
deep into their 30s or more, to just actually not know how to do that.
Yeah.
Would you say your partner is still, you know, sexual, you know, as far as, you know, feeling and enjoyment and stuff and desire, just not so much with the imagination of situations?
Yeah, you know, I almost wonder, and this is like the most awkward humble brag, but as myself, I have definitely had plenty of lonely nights where that imagination was very necessary. and she is not somebody who's ever had to school to find a dance partner. And so I almost wonder if that's a component of it.
I think it was for me.
So, yeah.
It's like, why should I learn how to do this when I've, got partners who could do it for me? And that was
plenty of people willing to do this for free.
Yeah.
Yeah, like maybe if your sexuality doesn't develop until it's already an actual option, that would make sense, because I started fantasizing before it was at all possible to have a partner of any sort. And so I had to build that.
I was a conservative Christian virgin till 21.
Right.
So
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe it's like a survival skill, sort of?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so then the big question would be, does she want to get to the point where she can do that?
I think to a degree, and I'm not necessarily concerned with her solo sex life so much as just struggling to empathize with or even understand or even anticipate in some ways just her fantasy life. When we start talking about, what we would like to do someday, if I bring something up, she's like, yeah, that sounds amazing. And then I'll bring something up and she says, that also sounds amazing. And then there'll be a pregnant pause where I'm waiting for her to bring up something and it doesn't happen. And, just trying to, I guess, to find some understanding of that.
And we were talking before about how a lot of people's fantasies and just the range of them are influenced through the sexual media that they see or read or do. So I don't know, maybe just like exposing her to pornography or literary sexual descriptions and such like that, fantasies, just as a
vocabulary builder.
Yeah. For an activity, we can, let's go out and listen to people reading porn or whatever.
You're probably familiar with
Cinemax subscription.
Yeah, there you go. You're probably familiar with in the kink world the concept of the yes, no, maybe list. Does that sound familiar? Yeah. So
Yeah. We actually did a test like that recently.
Jenna's got a nope face going on.
Well, a lot of our listeners would probably like to know.
Yes, absolutely. So,
well, it's kind of like something Daryl talked about recently. I'm sorry, Lily. Go ahead.
Oh, that's quite all right.
It's not your show right now, Christy.
So there's some jumping off point lists that you can find on the internet, but you can also make your own anytime. And it's a great thing to do with a relatively new partner, or even with a partner that you've been with a long time, but you're making some shifts and you're maybe just starting to open up sexuality in some way within a partnership. And you go down the list and you ask each other, so, this particular act or this particular genre of fantasy, yes, no, maybe. And it can spark a tremendous amount of discussion and really get you thinking about it. So, if pegging's on the list and it had never even occurred to you and they say yes, no, maybe, you have to go, well, I have to think about that. Well, what would that involve? What would that entail? Why would I like that? Would I like that? Maybe I like that, or whatever it is. But maybe running down, Christy, the list of moderately common fantasy fodder and asking her as a conversation point, yes, no, maybe on that.
My first exposure to that sort of thing was the 100-point purity test. Way back in the day, where it was a huge test that you would like print out, and it's like a packet full of pages, and you just go through and mark off a point for what interests you or what's true about you, to get your score, and like the lower score, the more rigid you were or whatever. I was a teenager, okay, but it really exposed me to a lot of both terminology and just like knowing that this thing existed so much that I had no idea before, like what is pegging, or what is frottage, or scissoring, or this and that or the other thing, and that really was the very first thing really that helped me to find what I would be interested in exploring back in the day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just knowing that it exists.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because if she's not...
It's kind of like a literacy.
Yeah.
You know, it's like I said, vocabulary.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't know what the options on the menu are, how are you going to know what you want to order?
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, or even if you know, but they're just not, in your headspace, it's never going to occur to you, right? It's like, what do you want for dinner? I don't know.
Yeah.
But, it's like, do you want sushi for dinner? Oh, yes, or
Right.
no.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the difference there.
And it could be a very bonding experience for the two of you to have a series of conversations about what the options are on the menu.
At the very least, it's a way to pass the time and get to know each other better.
An afternoon going through a bunch of adult costumes on some scandalous part of the internet. Sounds like a good time.
Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, that's actually some great ideas. I really appreciate it.
Well, glad you called in.
Thanks.
Absolutely. Y'all have a great night.
You too.
too,
Take care.
Christy.
Bye.
I don't know about that call. He's never going to have me on again. So, yes, we're reaching the final, 15, 20 minutes of the show. So, is there anything that either of you feel like we haven't covered yet that you'd like to talk about?
Let's see. What are you thinking?
I don't know.
All right. Well, while you think, so I was thinking about things that I've been asked to do fantasy-wise, and have not been into it so much. And for me, it was always role play. I had a partner for a long time, very long time, who was into role play of various sorts, and it didn't really. She had a hard time understanding why I wasn't into it, because it would always be something different, right? It was some different fantasy, this or was it doctors and nurses, or was it, I don't even remember. But it was always different. So she didn't understand. She kept on trying to find what it was that I would be into, when it turned out that what I wasn't into was actually role playing during that, because I love to role play. I'm a gamer. I'll do it all the time, but I can't do it so much at the same time, because it takes me to a different headspace.
Yes.
Like a completely different space. And for some people, that's, the best thing ever. It'll get them in the mood. And for me, it's just like, I'm in this different space, and I don't know how to connect it with my sexuality at all. So
I struggled with that too.
It was years before we came to the realization that was the disconnect.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. For me, the job of acting is a different headspace than the sex part of my head. Right. That being said, big exception for dominant and submissive roles, but those are so broad.
Yeah.
So, although there are some weird little pockets of my head where there are exceptions there.
Well, would you say that's because that's actually a sort of a part of you, and you're not so much acting it out?
Well, I don't know that's necessarily the case, because it's more like thinking about certain roles, certain costuming is exciting, but actually getting into lines and a plot that's more work than I wanted to get into.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It's easier when it's just you have this role, and go, rather than a whole scenario that's set up that I have to remember. Oh, and I also need your insurance card or whatever.
But boy, I have seen some of it done that is just smoking hot.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, a couple that I was good friends with for a long time, married couple, they'd been together a long time. They were so good at keeping it spicy. For one thing, they were poly, so they each had others. That always helps, always. But they would get into some rather public at sex parties role playing that I saw them do one night an interrogation scene that was brilliant.
Oh my.
It was awesome. She's like all tied to a chair and he's got on some crazy military costume and it involved flashlights and
Nice.
it was awesome. And he was trying to get her to give him the code and she was holding out and won't tell him the code and it was fantastic.
That sounds delightful.
It was so much fun to watch. I don't know that I could do it myself. I certainly never really given it a proper try, but what fun to watch, you know?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
All right. They had a great time. And the audience of folks who were watching this go down also had a great time. So,
All right. Well, we're coming to the end of the show. So I just wanted to, remind everybody that if you want to, continue this conversation with us, if you finish the show and you think, oh man, I really, want to share this fantasy that I have or this situation I've been in or get this question answered, you can always, you can wait for the next show and call us in, or you can give us an email at sex@atheist-community.org. Got that? And we'd be happy to talk to you. And so if everyone's ready, we'll take out the show by letting our audience know that whatever you're doing today and whatever fantasies you might have in your head after watching this show, I hope that you take them to yourself or a partner and enjoy a great orgasm from them, or give someone else one.